1877. Poland has been erased from the map. Saying the Rosary is a crime. Two little girls walk past a tree, and the Mother of God steps out speaking perfect Polish. What she says next terrifies the most powerful man in Europe and becomes the exact blueprint for Fatima 40 years later. This is the story of Gietrzwald, the apparition that changed history and was deliberately forgotten. To understand its power, you have to understand the enemy, Otto von Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor of Prussia. He launched a brutal campaign called the Kulturkampf, the culture struggle, to crush Catholicism. Priests were arrested, thrown in chains. Seminaries were shut down. The Polish language was banned from schools, from public life. Churches were seized by the state. Bismarck himself stood before the Prussian parliament and bragged, "We will not go to Canossa." He was declaring total war on the church, vowing that Catholicism in his empire would be dead in 10 years. The might of the German Empire was brought down on Polish Catholics, who had nothing left but their faith. Heaven's answer to this iron fist? It wasn't an army. It wasn't a political leader. It was two poor, uneducated girls from a forgotten village nobody cared about. Meet Justyna Szafrinska, age 13. She was poor, often sick, and preparing for her first Holy Communion. Her friend was Barbara Samulowska, just 12 years old. They lived in Gietrzwald, a tiny village in the Warmia region, under harsh Prussian rule. Their world was one of poverty, oppression, and forced Germanization. They were the most unlikely heroes imaginable. On June 27, 1877, as twilight settled over the fields, Justyna was walking home from church with her mother. As they passed a large maple tree near the rectory, she looked up, and there, suspended in a light brighter than the sun, was a beautiful woman seated on a golden throne, holding the Christ child. The woman smiled at them. It was an image of pure, divine majesty, breaking into a world of darkness and despair. Justyna was stunned. She ran to her uncle, the local priest, and told him what she saw. The next day, Barbara joined her to pray the Rosary by the tree. The vision appeared again. Barbara asked, "Who are you?" The woman spoke, and her first words were a bombshell that would echo through Poland. She spoke in their forbidden native tongue, Polish. Ja jestem Najświętsza Panna Maria Niepokalanie Poczęta. I am the most holy Virgin Mary, the immaculately conceived. This was the first time the Virgin Mary had ever spoken in Polish in an approved apparition. It was a direct validation of their identity, their faith, and their language, right in the face of Bismarck's oppression. A few days later, on July 1st, the girls asked her what she wanted. Her answer was simple and direct. "I wish you to pray the Rosary every day." Fatima fans, does that sound familiar? The famous request from 1917? Mary ordered it here first, in Gietrzwald, in 1877. This wasn't just a spiritual request. It was an act of political defiance. Every rosary prayed in Polish was a strike against the Prussian regime. The news spread like wildfire. Despite threats of arrest, Poles began to flood into the tiny village. First hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands. They came on foot, by cart, from all corners of the divided nation, creating a massive, spontaneous pilgrimage. They knelt in the mud, in the rain, openly praying the Rosary in Polish while Prussian soldiers stood nearby, armed with rifles, watching this forbidden display of faith. And then the miracles began. The sick were brought on stretchers and in wheelbarrows. In front of skeptical Prussian officers and doctors, the blind suddenly saw. The crippled stood up and walked. These weren't vague rumors. They were documented, public events that shattered the materialist worldview of the authorities. The maple tree became a symbol of hope for the entire nation. The Prussian government grew desperate. They sent an official to chop it down. As the story goes, one man who was paid to do the job raised his axe, gave a terrible cry, and dropped dead on the spot. The official Prussian report, which you can still find, documents the chaos and the government's total inability to stop the phenomenon. The empire struck back, hard. Berlin was in a state of panic. This peasant girl's vision was undoing years of their expensive Germanization policy. They saw it as a Polish political demonstration, a rebellion fueled by superstition. Secret police were sent to infiltrate the crowds of pilgrims, taking notes, identifying leaders. 2 full regiments of soldiers were deployed to surround the village, ready to disperse the crowds by force. The girls, Justina and Barbara, were repeatedly arrested and interrogated. They were threatened with being sent to an orphanage, with prison, with death. Their families were harassed. The official order came down from the highest levels in Berlin. Stop Gietrzwald at any cost. They tried everything: threats, intimidation, military force. But Mary's answer was to simply keep showing up. She appeared to the girls over 160 more times, each vision strengthening the people's resolve. The more Prussia pushed, the more heaven pushed back. While the Prussian state fumed, the church acted with astonishing speed. The local bishop, Andrzej Thiel, was initially cautious. He set up a theological and medical commission to investigate the events while they were still happening. They interrogated the visionaries, interviewed witnesses to the healings, and analyzed every detail. The girls' testimony never wavered. Their simple, consistent accounts and the sheer volume of supernatural events were overwhelming. So, on September 16, 1877, after only 2.5 months of apparitions, Bishop Thiel publicly approved the devotion. This remains one of the fastest Marian approvals in the entire history of the Church. It was a public declaration of victory. Bismarck raged. His empire had failed to crush 2 little girls and a vision in a tree. Heaven had won. The message was clear: earthly power is nothing compared to divine power. The climax arrived on September 8th, the Feast of the Nativity of Mary. A massive crowd, estimated at over 50,000 people, gathered at Gietrzwald. They were soaked by a pouring rain, yet they prayed without ceasing. During her final appearance, Mary blessed a spring of water near the apparition site. Her final words were a promise for the future. From this place will flow a spring for the healing of souls and bodies. The very next morning, pilgrims discovered that water had begun to burst forth from solid rock at the spot she indicated. That spring is still flowing today, nearly 150 years later, a source of countless documented healings, just as she promised. A healing spring, appearing at the site of an apparition, blessed by Mary herself, just like the one that would later appear at Fatima. So think about it. Everything you love and associate with Fatima, the call for the daily rosary, the miraculous healing spring, the massive crowds gathering in the rain, the visionaries being persecuted by a hostile anti-Catholic government, and Mary's ultimate triumph over that regime. It all started right here, in Polish, in 1877. Fatima wasn't new. It was the sequel, the second chapter in a modern drama that began in a forgotten Polish village. If Fatima was heaven's final warning to a world stumbling toward war and atheism, then Gietrzwald was heaven loading the weapon. We ignored the first shot. The question is, are we still ignoring it today? Comment Gietrzwald 1877 right now if this just rewrote everything you thought you knew about Fatima. Then pray 1 rosary today for Poland and for the Church. She's still waiting. Thanks for watching.